What the hell are you running from?
You know, I could ask you the same question. Except, I already know the answer.
Oh, you do ya?
I do, Mr. Franz. You gotta get back out in the world. Get out of that lonely house, that little workshop of yours. Get back out on the road. Really? You're gonna live a long time, Ron. You should make a radical change in your lifestyle. I mean, the core of man's spirit comes from new experiences. And there you are, stubborn old man, sitting on your butt.
I'm gonna miss you when you go.
I'll miss you too, Ron. But you're wrong if you think that the joy of life comes principally from human relationships. God's placed it all around us. It's in everything, in anything we can experience. People just need to change the way they look at those things.
Yeah, I'm gonna take stock of that.
At long last he was unencumbered, emancipated from the stifling world of his parents and peers, a world of abstraction and security and material excess, a world in which he felt grievously cut off from the raw throb of existence. Driving west out of Atlanta, he intended to invent an utterly new life for himself, one in which he would be free to wallow in an unfiltered experience. To symbolize the complete severance from his previous life, he even adopted a new name. No longer would he answer to Chris McCandless, he was Alexander Supertramp. It's with these words that Jon Krakauer describes the adventure of Chris McCandless, the protagonist of his bestseller Into the Wild, published in 1996. Thanks to a journal found near the body of Chris, Jon Krakauer tells the real story of the guy in the wild nature of Alaska, haunted by the particulars of the boy's starvation and by the unsettling parallels between events in his life and those in his own. Apart from being an essayist and an investigative journalist, John is also an American mountaineer, well known for his books on mountaineering, a passion that he cultivates since he was a child. In 1976, John graduates in environmental sciences and climbs many mountains, among which the David's Thumb, the Cerro Torre, and finally the Mount Everest. After this last experience, he will publish Into Thin Air. John gets to know the story of Chris only by chance. After Chris' corpse was found, the editor of the magazine Outside entrusts John with an article on the mysterious death of Chris. The guy who at the age of 22 years old in 1990, after graduating at Emory University in Atlanta and unbeknown to his parents, decides to drop out of sight, give his savings account to charity and rug margin of the materialistic consumer and capitalist society in search of raw and transcendent experience in the nature of Alaska. Troubled by the bad relationship with his parents and influenced by nonconformist authors like Thoreau and London, for 2 years Chris travels in the US and the north of Mexico to reach in 1992 the so-dreamed land of Alaska. Along his journey he meets many people. In South Dakota he works in a grain elevator, then he gets to know an hippie couple and finally an old veteran who gives him useful tips for his journey to Alaska, and to whom Chris will teach the concept of freedom. For a while Chris works also in a McDonald's, but very soon he won't understand active cities and decides to continue his journey. On the 28th April 1992, Chris crosses the Teclanica River and finds the Magic Pass, which will be his refuge for the next 4 months. Here, in the uncontaminated lands of the wild Alaska, Chris lives on hunting and fishing, reads Tolstoy, Thoreau and London, and very soon he understands that happiness is in the love for neighbor and not in material things. There is a passage underlined by Chris in Family Happiness by Tolstoy. He was right in saying that the only certain happiness in life is to live for others. I have lived through much, and now I think I've found what is needed for happiness. A quite secluded life in the country, with the possibility of being useful to people to whom it's easy to do good, and who are not accustomed to have it done to them, then work, which one hopes may be of some use, then rest, nature, books, music, love for one's neighbor. Such is my idea of happiness. On 3rd July, Chris decides to come back home, but the Teclanica River was too cold and fast to cross. Looking desperately for berries to eat, with no animals to hunt, Chris accidentally hits a poisonous berry, which will bring him to a slow and painful death. A film adaptation of the book, directed by Sean Penn, was released in 2007, starring Emil Hirsch as Chris, who manages to make perfectly visible the spiritual journey of Chris towards Alaska, so that the actor will be awarded for his dramatic interpretation. However, it is possible to find some diverging aspects between the film and the book.
He walks the earth. No phone, no pool, no pets, no cigarettes. Ultimate freedom. An extremist. An aesthetic voyager whose home is the road.
Concerning the narrative style, it is evident that in the book events are told by the writer, who very often includes his own opinion as well as that of Chris' parents and that of the characters who the boy meets during his journey. On the contrary, in the film, the narrative voice of Chris' sister, Karen McCandless, alternates to Chris' first-person narration. About issues treated in the book, the film keeps faith to the adventures that Chris faces, but in his work, John tells the story of Chris as well as other characters' similar stories, including also events of his own life. Maybe the author makes this choice to fill the period during which Chris stopped writing on his journal, which allows John to know the story of the boy. The writer has also interviews with people that Chris knew, useful to learn all about his adventure. The director and the actor perfectly managed to show the psychology and the maturation path of Chris McCandless. He lives wishing to acquire the simplicity, native feelings and virtues of savage life. He wants to divest himself of the factious habits, prejudices and imperfections of civilization, radically change his lifestyle to escape conformism and life security, that may appear to give one peace of mind, but in reality nothing is more damaging to the adventurous spirit within a man than a secure future. According to Chris, the very basic core of a man's living spirit is his passion for adventure. The joy of life comes from our encounters with new experiences, and hence there is no greater joy than to have an endlessly changing horizon, for each day to have a new, different sun. However, at the end of his journey, Chris highlights a passage of the book Dr. Zhivago, and so it turned out that only a life similar to the life of those around us, merging with it without a ripple, is genuine life, and that an unshared happiness is not happiness. Happiness only real when shared. This could be a further evidence that McCandless' long, lonely sabbatical had changed him in some significant way. He was ready to go back to the civilized world and stop running so hard from intimacy and become a member of the human community. But in the end, he would die in solitude in the wide Alaskan lands.